No one expected the room to fall silent so quickly, not at a live event filled with reporters, flashing cameras, and restless fans. But the moment Jamie Dornan leaned forward in his chair during a high-profile interview and said, "There's something I've never told anyone about 50 Shades," the entire atmosphere shifted. The host froze mid-smile. The audience stopped breathing. And before anyone could process what was happening, Jamie began revealing a truth he had carried for years. One that would send shockwaves across Hollywood and leave Dakota Johnson blindsided. At first, people assumed he was about to share a funny behind-the-scenes anecdote, the kind actors often repeat on talk shows. But Jamie's tone wasn't playful. It was grounded, heavy, almost reflective in a way fans had rarely seen. He spoke about the overwhelming fame that hit him like a tidal wave after the first film's release. Overnight, he became a symbol, an international fixation. "People thought it was glamorous," he said, "but there were months when I felt like I was drowning." It wasn't bitterness in his voice, it was honesty sharpened by time. And suddenly, those watching realized this wasn't a light confession. It was a door opening into a side of fame he had never dared reveal. He described how the pressure twisted itself around every part of his life. The criticism, the jokes, the sexualization, the relentless scrutiny. None of it matched the man he believed himself to be. He laughed softly, almost apologetically, and admitted that he often avoided reading anything about the films because the comments made him question his own worth. "I was grateful," he emphasized, "but I was also terrified. I didn't know how to balance what the world wanted from me with who I really was." The room stayed painfully quiet. This wasn't the narrative anyone expected from one of Hollywood's most enigmatic stars. Then came the part no one saw coming. The truth about his dynamic with Dakota Johnson during those intense years. Jamie explained that working together on such physically demanding and emotionally complex material had created invisible fractures that the public never noticed. "We cared about each other," he said, "but some days were incredibly hard. We were both under so much pressure, it affected how we communicated." His admission hung in the air, raw and disarming. He didn't blame Dakota. He didn't paint himself as a victim. He simply told the truth. Fame had pushed both of them to the edge, and there were moments when their friendship nearly snapped under the weight. He recalled days on set when they barely spoke, not out of anger, but exhaustion. Days when they misinterpreted each other's tone because they were stretched too thin. Days when the world saw chemistry, but behind the camera, both were silently holding themselves together. "People think we clicked effortlessly," Jamie said, "but they don't know how much work it took, not just acting, but supporting each other while pretending we weren't falling apart." His voice deepened, thick with sincerity, and the world listening felt the ground shift beneath them. The revelation exploded online within minutes. Headlines flashed across social media. "Jamie breaks his silence." Clips of the interview spread faster than wildfire. Fans reacted with shock, sympathy, confusion. But amidst the chaos, one question rose louder than all. How would Dakota Johnson respond? She had no idea he was going to say this. At that exact moment, Dakota was attending a different event, smiling on a carpet, posing for photos, completely unaware that a storm involving her name was forming on the other side of the city. When a reporter approached her with a phone showing Jamie's comments, witnesses said the expression on Dakota's face shifted instantly. She blinked, her smile faltering, her posture tightening as she read the words. People nearby described it as a moment of emotion colliding with shock, a mixture of surprise, vulnerability, and a flicker of something undefinable. She didn't lash out. She didn't respond immediately. She simply nodded, excused herself politely, and walked away from the cameras. The internet erupted. What did her reaction mean? Was she hurt? Angry? Relieved? The silence from her team only intensified the speculation. Fans dissected her expression frame by frame, arguing whether she seemed emotional or upset. Some defended her fiercely. Others insisted she must have been blindsided. One thing was clear. Jamie's revelation had triggered a chain reaction far bigger than a simple interview segment. By the end of the night, both their names dominated global trends. Analysts debated Jamie's motives. Commentators wondered if the two stars had unresolved tensions from years ago. Fans begged Dakota to speak. But beneath all the noise, one truth lingered like a haunting echo. Dakota Johnson had never expected Jamie to reveal this part of their past, and her reaction was only the beginning. The hours after Jamie's revelation felt like a pressure cooker set to explode. Online discussions grew louder, more chaotic, more emotionally charged. Fans demanded answers, journalists scrambled for reactions, and Hollywood insiders whispered about the fallout between two actors whose on-screen chemistry once defined a generation. But the most anticipated voice, the one the world waited for with breath held, was Dakota Johnson's. And when she finally broke her silence, her response did more than shock the internet. It reframed the entire narrative. Dakota didn't release a statement immediately. Instead, she appeared unexpectedly at a small indie film QA later that evening, looking composed but noticeably quieter than usual. Reporters surrounded her the moment she stepped inside, each trying to capture the first raw reaction to Jamie's confessions. Dakota held up a hand, signaling patience, and for a moment she looked as though she were searching for the right words. Words that wouldn't betray the complicated mixture of emotions flashing behind her eyes. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, but undeniably affected. "I didn't know he was going to talk about that," she admitted. "But maybe it was time." Her tone wasn't defensive. It wasn't angry. It carried something deeper, an honesty that matched Jamie's revelation with equal vulnerability. The room stiffened, waiting for more. Dakota continued, saying there were chapters of their 50 Shades experience that neither of them had processed properly. She acknowledged the intensity of the trilogy, the pressure, the lack of privacy, the unspoken expectations. Then, in a moment that caught even veteran reporters off guard, she said softly, "We went through something together that no one else can really understand." Her words rippled across social media with the force of a tremor. Fans expected conflict or denial, but instead Dakota offered reflection, measured, emotional, almost nostalgic. She revealed that, like Jamie, she had struggled during the filming years. She admitted there were days when the fame felt suffocating, when the scrutiny on her body, her expressions, her performance became unbearable. And yet, she also emphasized that she and Jamie always tried, in their own imperfect ways, to protect each other. "We had moments," Dakota confessed, "when we didn't talk. Moments when we misunderstood each other. But we also had moments when the only person who understood how I felt was him." The room went silent again. But her most surprising statement came when she addressed the fractures Jamie had spoken about. Instead of refuting them, she revealed there had indeed been a time, during the second film, when she and Jamie barely communicated for weeks. It wasn't hatred or resentment. It was overwhelm. Both were under intense global scrutiny, constantly compared, constantly sexualized as a pair. "Some days we were just numb," she said. "We didn't know how to be coworkers and human beings at the same time." No one had expected Dakota to be this open, this raw, this willing to pull back the curtain. The media instantly erupted with headlines claiming tension, but what came next surprised everyone even more. After the event ended, Dakota slipped out through a side exit, only to run into Jamie, who had arrived quietly after hearing she was speaking publicly. Photographers caught the exact moment their eyes met, Dakota's expression softening, Jamie's posture shifting from guarded to relieved. The photos spread like wildfire, proof that despite the storm, their bond had not shattered. Witnesses later described their brief interaction. Jamie approached her with cautious warmth, as if unsure whether she wanted the conversation. Dakota didn't hesitate. She stepped closer, placing a hand on his arm. They spoke quietly, faces close enough that they didn't need to raise their voices. One reporter said Dakota's expression flickered with emotion more than once, while Jamie nodded with the gentleness of someone acknowledging old wounds. When the conversation ended, Dakota touched his shoulder gently before walking toward her car. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't staged. It was real. Online, fans split into passionate factions. Some praised Jamie for his honesty. Others argued he should have warned Dakota. Many celebrated Dakota's calm, compassionate reaction. And thousands of posts appeared from longtime supporters, saying the exchange outside the venue felt like closure, healing, or even the beginning of a new chapter. Analysts on entertainment talk shows debated whether the pair might collaborate again someday, or whether this moment marked the emotional reconciliation they never had years ago. Meanwhile, Hollywood insiders offered quieter, more nuanced commentary. They suggested Jamie's revelation wasn't about reopening old wounds. It was about acknowledging the emotional toll fame had taken on both of them. Dakota's response, they said, proved her maturity and deep understanding of the complexity of their shared past. Some even noted how rare it was to see two major stars confront such vulnerable truths with grace rather than scandal. And yet, even with their public comments and that brief emotional encounter, one question hovered in the air like an unfinished sentence. Was this the final word on their 50 Shades chapter, or the moment that would lead to an even deeper truth neither has spoken yet?